Hello and welcome to the Dirt Racing Series, Season 4, Race 2. The first of its kind, a team time race, all about the fourth rider across the line. So this is a new format of racing that most of you won't have seen before. So we're on the Knickerbocker clause, and it's going to be 1.5 laps finishing on top of the KOM. In this version, we're racing the Gold 1 category. So that's riders who are at the bottom of the Gold category, just moved up from Silver 3, who we saw last week, on the Zwift Racing app ranking system, which is an ELO-based, results-based kind of way of categorizing. And so we have a much more variety in terms of abilities in the pen, but it creates a bit more interesting racing, hopefully. Something a bit different, with different opportunities that mean that it's not always just going to be a sprint finish. You can have a few more breakaways, a few more different tactics going on. So looking at the course today, and bearing in mind that it's about the fourth ride across the line, so there aren't individual points, it's just the team league standings on the right hand side at the bottom. So the fourth ride is just going to count for those league points. And so we start off with Harlem Hill, about 2.5–3 kilometers in. Which is the first real possibility of an attack, but then the real key factor is going to be 8 kilometers in, the first time up the KOM, and that's where everything's going to get stretched out and split apart. When we get to the top there, riders will start to be looking around, seeing where their team's fourth rider is, and if you've got 3 in the front, your best option there is to drop them back and help out that fourth rider get back on. There's no point just pushing the pace, making it harder for your team, helping other teams get away. It's all about dropping back there and helping out. So you see, as we go back down the field normally, in the earlier races, you're going to see teams team time trialing essentially to get back to the lead group, and that's where the team time trial part comes in. But ultimately, it does come down to a race between those fourth place riders for the teams, and the front group tends to fall back into kind of standard racing of some kinds, just with a bit more of a tactical element. It's great to see just something different and being trialled by the DRS series. Or should I say, the Dirt Racing series, rather than doubling up. So jumping on, we're in the Gold one. We're going to have a quick look at the team standings so far. So we've had one race so far, and looking at this lead, we've got Team NL, Dutch team, Netherlands, leading the way, closely followed by Foudre, and then the other Team NL, Gold. So then we've got in fourth, ZR Scott. We've got Powerpuff Dirt in 5th, Rhinos, Velos, Team Electric Spirit, Pain Cave Heroes, Southborough Wheelers, and Team CLS. So a big variety of teams here. It's great to see some new faces for the series, and a lot of competition still to come. So we're going to take a quick check across, sorry for that. Having a look at the results of the individual riders so far. So we had 2 of the riders from Team NL Gold 1 EMEA West 2. I'm not sure whether that's meant to be their second team, leading the way, Barry Van Leeuwen and Hans Saris. So it's great for them if they are supposed the Team NL second of the 2 teams here. And then a huge variety of riders going back. So we'll jump onto the live stream now with a minute to go before the start. We can go through a few of the kits for you. For those who aren't aware, you can see the Dirt community kit at the bottom of your screen, bottom left of sorts. I think it's quite obvious with Dirt written all over the back. Then you've got Cryogen in the blue. Team NL, see them towards the front. They've got these orange stripes with a blue bottom half. We've got ZR Scott in the purple and blue with a cross towards the bottom, the white cross. TBR, you should be able to see the name popped up there. With the green stripe, CLS says it on the kit. Let's see who else we can swap around. We've got Level Velo in the bright yellow, and not quite sure if we can spot the difference between the 2 Team NL kits. Perhaps that Bumblebee, I think that Bumblebee will be another one, but we'll see if we can spot the difference between the 2 NL teams to help you out there with identifying them. And see the Velos with this lovely blue kit at the bottom as we get started on the race. So we saw earlier, it's not been too aggressive a start in most of these. One thing that we can see and might see is people pushing very, very hard at the start to see if they can drop any of those riders who maybe aren't quite as fit or don't have as much punch. But after that, it's all about kind of waiting till we get over the first KOM. And you can do some damage to riders, take out a bit of the freshness from the legs. Up Harlem Hill, it's about a 1.5 minute incline with a little bit of C-section. We want to see one rider really sending it from TBR through the group there. Ultimately, it's going to come down to that first KOM. Saw a team earlier pushing the pace really hard at the start, between the start and the first climb, and it just burnt out their legs. So possibly people have watched that back, seen the tactics, and decided against it. Personally, I wouldn't really recommend doing that. You want to make sure you get as many riders up and over the KOM as possible for your team, as high up as possible, and then go from there and deciding what you do. So for those wondering what kind of numbers we're going to be looking at today in the group, we've got a few A's with us in this field. Generally they're on the lighter weight side of things. And then the vast majority of riders here are going to be B. We'll have a couple of C's, but it's generally that kind of mid to upper B. I don't really like saying mid, because mid B's theoretically should, you know, be around 3.7, 3.6, maybe a bit higher, but, you know, around that 3.7 watt per kilo. But realistically, because of how big the field is in B and how many people are on that kind of A-B boundary, especially now the top end gaps have moved up a bit, I tend to say mid B is around 3.9 watts per kilo for 20 minutes, and that's obviously the vast majority of riders in this category fall. What we will notice is that the sprints are still going to be there. We're still going to have riders here capable of putting in big old kicks, doing a lot of damage. See one of the Veloz riders just pushing off the front here at 6.8 watts per kilo. It's an interesting tactic. Maybe might have had some issues there. They managed to get a little bit of a gap on the team group there, but no one's really going to panic here. This is where the kind of fourth rider tactics come into play. It's okay to let one or two riders go. It's not the end of the world, and you don't need to waste energy chasing. The key thing is going to be if 4 riders go, where that fourth rider ends up. And so it's important that teams are keeping track of it, seeing where their main opposition is, how many riders they have, how many they can afford to lose. And we see CLS here with 5 riders, so, you know, dropping one, you don't need to worry. If they drop a second one, though, you know, you need to push on and ensure that they don't get back on there. And we see with Dirt have plenty of riders there. Team NL with loads. I'm not quite sure what's going on that second Team NL team. I can't see them in there. Maybe there was a slight glitch in the system. Just take a look. I'm not sure what was happening with that, but it looks like we've just got one Team NL team. God, that's a tongue twister. Out today on the road. It looks like they've named themselves Dirty Dutch. Hadn't quite spotted that in the system. They've acquired a few extra riders to help fill it out, who knows. See him here as you come into the base of Harlem Hill. And it's important to try and avoid the front through this section. You see Vance with ZR Scott hitting it aggressively there, but just watch how quickly that speed falls down. He's doing 5 watts per kilo here. He's pushing hard. That's going to be above the 5-minute numbers for most of these riders. But, you know, he's going to just fall back. He hasn't changed. He's still doing 5 watts per kilo, but those riders around doing 2, 3 are still coming past him because he was out the front, not getting any benefit of the draft. As we come into the start of the hill. So see, there we go, an instant attack from Cryogen, 10 watts per kilo. That's a big old push. We've got a couple of his teammates just sitting in there. But again, no one's really necessarily going to chase this. There's no real need to. It's going to see Yarvinen from Veloz is going as well. Herman's just sat up a little bit there. Gone down to 5 watts per kilo, which is less than what the group chasing is going to be doing. Possibly he's hoping others might go with him. Something might happen. I'm not quite sure, but it's a very aggressive attack there. It's definitely planned out for some kind of reason. See another one of his teammates just coming across the gap, just 5 meters over the rest of the field. And you wonder if we could start to see him kicking again. Maybe they've blown that match already. Yeah, and just see him sailing up to see Peterson from TBR pushing the front again. Looking at the back of the group, everything still seems fairly together. It's stretched out a little bit, but no one's really dropped off the back yet. So these little punches haven't really affected anyone. They've just kind of a little bit of wasted energy for cryogen there. So they're just staying away now. Bods from Cryo is still working hard, possibly just to get his speed back up, so he's dropped back down now on the downhill. There is a long climb. It's not a steep climb, but it's a long 2-3% section after this, so it's possible that you can go for a full breakaway here if you know you've not got the best 3.5 minute, probably closer to 4 minute for these riders power. Then maybe you want to go for this long distance, but realistically, if you don't have a good 4 minute power, you probably don't have a good 20-minute power or 10-minute power, because it's going to be all in that kind of aerobic system with very little anaerobic benefit. So again, for them, it's unlikely that it's going to be beneficial to go that long that early. It is a punchy climb, but the first time round, we're probably not going to lose too many of that. So a couple of riders have just fallen off the back here. So one ZR Scott guys, 2 TBR riders, one might just make it back. Obviously Pedersen here, who's falling back through the group quite quickly. Suspect with that 3% incline, he's going to get back on, especially with that kick there. And we've lost 3 riders so far, so TBR, Cryogen, ZR Scott down a rider each. And I think all those teams still have enough riders in that front group. They still have 4. ZR Scott definitely do. Pretty sure TBR do, and Cryogen definitely do. That's the point where you're thinking about, if you're TBR and you only, in fact I think it might be TBR's 4th rider, at which point their best tactic is to totally drop off the back, go help them out, see if you can get them back onto the group. See a few people starting to push the pace here. Maybe someone else has noticed that. TBR only have, there we go, there's the 4th TBR rider. Not quite wearing this. This is Velos/TBR, so I'm not quite sure. Maybe that's a joint team. Didn't notice that. So yeah, that looks like a joint team between TBR and Velos, which explains why they're not dropping back to help their teammate there, as they have plenty left in that front group. So we've got Cryogen just working the pace a bit at the front. Aldridge, and then Hilton from Level Velo. And if you're one of those stronger riders here, one of those fitter riders, one of those strong A's that we see, like Vunderback from Cryogen, Valence, ZR Scott, possibly want to be doing a bit of work here, making the others suffer in between the climbs. You see there Valence from ZR Scott doing exactly that. And it just depends how confident you are that you can keep up with a front group over the climb. If you know you can do it, then just push the pace a little bit, make the others work beforehand. There's no harm doing it to get a long rest on the downhill after. So again, we've got 2 kilometers to go to the base of the climb. We've just got this long downhill. Oh. Again, things are just going to be quite tame from here on out to it. I think people are just going to start sitting up. So we've got this long downhill. There's not too much point in any of these teams attacking now. So you want them just getting off the front so they can get their super tuck in. With a new pack dynamic 4, you can only super tuck if you're towards the front of a big group. If you've got too much draft benefit, then you're not able to super tuck, which is one the kind of things put in place to try and help breakaways. And while it does help them a little bit, it maybe doesn't make quite as significant a difference as they'd hope. Again, there's just those little things to make solo breakaways, or 2 or 3 rider breakaways more likely to happen, is always going to be beneficial for Zwift Racing, to make it a bit more interesting. See Norlander from Team NL pushing off the front. A very aggressive kick there, definitely a purposeful move. It might just be a little bit too close to the climb for that to be massively beneficial. But again, Team NL have plenty of riders, so they might just be trying to tire other teams out, get them to chase down and waste a bit of that punch before we hit the climb. And we're just coming over the sprint segment here. No sprint points today. It's all about just those finish positions for the 4th rider. And you might see people just putting a little dig, kind of muscle memory coming over this climb. See a few riders just dropping a little deep. I'd just be cautious here. There we go, and they're kicking back on. It's one of those where speed picks up very quickly on the downhill here. And if you get caught off the back, going slower than the group, it's very hard to get your speed back up and get back on. So here we go, 500 meters to the start of the climb. We start off in the tunnel section, which is about 6-7%. It's still very draftable even at the top of there. And so it's not really the perfect time to make a move. You just want to sit in, keep in the front third of the pack. But just sitting in, seeing what the front are doing and just doing that little bit less to save your legs. And then in that second, third and fourth section, once we cross the actual start banner of the segment, that's where it's really going to take off. See Thomas Ervik from the Psychos just pushing the pace a bit on the front, getting out the lead. We're at 40 kilometers an hour, so there's going to be quite a bit of draft saving in the pack still, so maybe not the wisest place to go. Again, people are just testing the water here. There are definitely riders in this pack that know they're going to make it over in the front group, and some that know they're going to be struggling. So I've got quite a few C's left in. There's a big old speed drop off between some of these A riders and B's and C's. So they won't be used to necessarily climbing at these paces, and what they're capable of is going to make a big difference in speed. So one of the NL riders just going straight away off the back there. It's tough to watch, but you know, for some of these riders, a climb like this isn't going to suit them at all. And all they can do is just make it to the end of the race as best they can, fighting for those places on the flats. So we've got a couple of the NL riders and ZR Scott mainly pushing the pace. Cryogen up there as well as we come into the main climb here. So this is where the segment starts, and this is where it starts to get really steep. So we get into double figures, 13-14% through this corner. And this is where we want to see maybe possibly some red numbers at the front. See Wilcock there going for Down Day Psychos. Meyer up there, Mark Meyer. Some real strong work here from the Psychos, but importantly, they only have 3 riders there. If they're going to make a push like that, they need to go with at least 4, if not more, so other teams have to respond. See here we're down to 4%, so there's small draft benefit. Speeds maybe aren't quite high enough for it. You know, sending 3 riders up the road isn't going to cause a team to chase you, because they can just sit in behind, relax, and just fight for that 4th rider. See Bods here from Cryogen just pushing it again on the second punch. Got a long flat section coming up, so again, if you can just sit in through that second punch the top and just let others lead you across the flat. See Bods here working hard, but he's solo up the road. He's not helping his teammates. He's not really doing too much apart from getting a small lead that's going to be caught up fairly instantly on the downhill. And he's better off just saving his legs here. If you're going to attack, you want to attack as a team on this kind of race. A couple more riders are starting to fall off the back here. As you come through the toughest section, you see getting up to 16% on that first corner. It's incredibly steep, and that's kind of high percentage climbing is really maintained. See a big difference here. I saw the earlier races of the Platinum Plus and the Platinum 1.5. There's a huge drop off in speed coming down into this division. They're still working hard, you know, 5 watts per kilo is a good effort up here. But importantly, you know, 5 watts per kilo to significantly lower speed than those going at 8 watts per kilo through this section, 7 or 8. It's a real big drop off. And importantly, 15 kilometers an hour versus the 22, 25 that they were doing makes a big difference in the draft. So the tactics do change. It becomes a bit of a longer, extended climb. And so you see this pack really stretching out. It's not the kind of little bunches falling off. It's just a long stretch out of riders of different climbing abilities. So you see Psychos start losing Tommy possibly off the back. He is pushing a bit to get back on. That's going to be tough for them, especially having just made that move at the front, hurting their own riders, seeing them dropping off the back. Seeing a couple of Dirty Dutch riders gone now. Another one, the Dirty Psychos. And quite a few of that TBR Velos joint team. See 4 of them already. So they're going to be down to their last rider in the front now. So join back on. Tommy's here still working quite hard to get back on, but he really needs to send it now. You've got 12% section here that you've got to sprint on. Once you're on the flats, you're going to be losing a lot versus that group. You've got all the benefit of the draft, so you're really stretching out. You've got Dirty Dutch, possibly losing another couple of riders. So it's going to be disappointing for them. You know, they're the top team in the standings, but it looks like they might be down to less than 4 in that front group. Looking, it looks like Level Velo Doing very well here. Cryogen as well. I'm not sure if we have 4 from ZR Scott. We've definitely got at least 3 from CLS. So it's a bit of a change in the fortunes of teams here. But really, as they come into this last section of the climb, they've got to reassess. CLS yet have their 4 riders. And you can see those 3 are dropping back a bit, whether it's out of choice or just pure fatigue. But to go with their 4th rider. Whereas the Dirt Riders, Psychos, one of their riders up the front, pushing the pace. As you've got David Wilcock here, not quite on. Possibly he knows he can make it over. And they can afford to push the pace at the front. They're going to be on comms talking it all through. It's an interesting tactic here. Teams are going to be wanting to see what's around them. See if there's a benefit for them pushing the pace. But in this front group, I'm not sure there is much. You see Level Velo have 4 riders. Cryogen have 4 riders. So everyone apart from Team NL in this front group have their 4 riders over the top. And so they don't necessarily want to push the pace too hard. Team NL have lost too far back to get back on before the downhill. So you just want to make sure you get your riders over. Maybe Cryogen had the benefit to push here. They seem to create a little bit of a split. Just one of the Dirt Psychos in there, one of the Level Velo riders in that front group. And one on the Team NL. We do have this bit of a gap on the road, so Cryogen have a lot of advantage now here. They don't want to necessarily do the work on the downhill sections itself, but on these little flatter sections, we're coming up to one here, they want to be punching hard, trying to maintain their speed. Oh, this chase group of about 10 riders we see here just behind them. We've got the rest of the ZR Scott 4, the rest of the Level Velo 4, and then it looks like Dirt, who have missed out here with this another group. The rest of the Dirt riders really falling back, so they're going to be quite disappointed with that. Dirt, they had their 4 riders in the bunch until that last section when one of their riders at the front pushed off and caused a bit of a kind of springboard effect with other teams starting to push the pace, and they went from having 4 in the front group to only 2, possibly 3 when this comes back together. So you see Benet is going to be their 4th rider, and he's joining this bigger group. He might get back on. Is it Benet? No, sorry. So it's going to be David Wilcock here, who's their 4th rider. So that's definitely going to hurt the Dirty Psychos. Saw Team NL far back, little Dirty Dutch, you might want to call them. Riders all scattered down the road. So they're going to be struggling. So now we're on to the flats. Teams really need to start communicating, working out where their 4th rider is and dropping back to help them. Dirty Psychos here should be just chilling out. They don't want to help the speed of this front group, and even just sitting in there creates more draft, more opportunity for those to ram. It's probably a minimal difference, but it's enough, and teams should be dropping back now. See the Team NL rider just sat in the front, and what we ultimately should be left with these 4 Cryogen riders and the 4 Level Velo riders. The reason I don't say to kind of just keep in the front, trust that your rider is going to get back on, is because, yeah, they might get back on. We see Wilcock here for the Psychos, and Dodds from CLS putting in a big shift. I think they've got another, yep, there's Barham from CLS. They're all doing hard work to try and get back on. But when they get back there, if they even get back, they're going to be knackered. And so you're still going to have a 4th rider who's weak, relatively, because he's fatigued, hurting. And it's not working in your favour. Whereas if you slow down, help them out, you're going to have 4 evenly balanced riders again, and a much better chance going in towards the finish. See, there we go. The Psychos just starting to slow down and drop back to their teammate, knowing that there's no benefit to them being in that front group. Suspect we might see ZR Scott starting to do the same soon. The likes of Valence, Hornby and Fish just sitting in there. But it does look like Valence is pushing the pace a bit, which might not be the wisest of moves. See if we can find where their next rider is. So we've got 2 of them down the road with Grieve and Kerr. And followed by a couple more of the Dirty Dutch riders. So here's the chase group forming. Going to have 5 of the Dirty Psychos, 4 of Team CLS. Then one of the Cryogen riders, who's presumably just going to sit in. He knows his teammates are up the road. They've got all 4 of them. So there's no benefit to Gunther here doing any work whatsoever. We've got Simons from SDW. So the rest of the team going to be a bit further down the road. So again, their best bet is just to drop back and help them out. So, looking back to the kind of team standings, we had one of the Team NL groups in first, followed by Foudre, who we don't seem to have seen today. I'm not quite sure what's happened with that. Then ZR Scott in fourth, with the other Team NL team ahead of them. So ZR Scott are definitely going to be moving up the field here versus Team NL. Then Powerpuff Dirt, which I presume is the Dirty Psychos. I'll just quickly check that we're on the right one here. So you see CLS and Dirt working hard together to try and chase down that front group. But it's splitting apart a bit. I see Tom Cervic leading the way. Some of the CLS guys on his wheel. Again, that's definitely going to close back together, judging by the pace. This Cryogen try and hold them off, doing quite a lot of work on the front up this little punch here. But it's not going to be enough to hold off that group with Level seemingly content just to sit in for now. That gap's still at about 7-8 seconds. But that's more than enough to kind of put the carrot in the mouth of the Dirt and CLS riders. I'll be amazed if that stays away. So looking a bit further back, we've got the rest of that ZR Scott riders. Seem to have 5 of them back there. 4 of them back there. And so possibly they think that's going to be enough to close it back down. It's a bit of a strange tactic why the 3 in their front group haven't dropped back to them to help them out, but it is what it is. Then do we have all 4 of the Dirty Dutch? Might just be 3 riders. So if you get a bit of a wider view, so you just have 3 riders from that Team NL team, Dirty Dutch, which isn't ideal at all for them. The big old gap to the rest of their groups who are chasing down as a 3. But again, you want to see them just working together. They might as well get their entire team together and have a 6-rider TTT to move up the field, rather than having a bit of a bigger group here that's helping out the other teams stay away. You see, that front group has started to push away a bit more, up to a 12-second gap. And they're doing a bit more work. Wonder if what's going on with that chase effort. We saw their chase effort getting quite strung out earlier. Possibly a couple of those rides in the teams are tiring and they're realising, you know, it's not beneficial if they do all that hard work to chase the gap, but lose their 4th rider or absolutely wear them out. And 13 seconds is definitely chaseable, even if it's just on the KOM itself. Especially with the kind of 4-minute effort that KOM is going to be for these teams. So we approach what will be a reverse Harlem Hill. We're on the Harlem Hill section itself, but after we get down to the base, we have a very sharp kicker, followed by a kind of long climb at 1-2% that can really make up the gap that we see here. And Cryogen really seems to be taking the lead here to do the damage and hold off that gap. As we come up here, we've got the other level velo. Still working hard, but Cryogen are doing a lot of the kind of main work to keep this away, and that gap's really opened up. 22 seconds now we're looking at the gap between the front pack and the chasers with Dirty Psychos and Team CLS. And once we get to the top, it's a long bit of time to keep eking out that distance. So from now we've got a good 10-15 minutes till the next key feature, which is going to be the forward direction of Harlem Hill. We've just gone over the reverse direction, so we're going to go around the edge of the course, start onto the second lap, and then we've got the forward direction. So it might be an appropriate time just to apologise for some confusion. So this is actually the Gold 2 race. I'm not quite sure what's happened with that, with the sign-ups. I was under the impression it was the Gold 3, so apologies. Also, I have the impression it was Gold 1, so apologies to anyone there. This is the Gold 2 race, in fact. And so we'll just get the team standings and just some information up for you on that. And I'll link it later on, once the live stream's over, so that you can check it out and see what's been going on. So while on this settled, just going to get up what will hopefully be the team standings for the Gold 2 section. So in first place, the current leaders are the Dirty Psychos, so we see them about 3rd or 4th on the road at the moment. Then Cryogen Cannondale, who are pushing hard at the front, so it's going to be a big points gain for them if they can carry on this and hold off the Dirty Cycles. Then Level Velo Racing Emeralds, who are currently in that front group as well with Cryogen, and Dirty Dutch in that Team NL kit just behind. Sorry, they're a bit further behind, so they're going to drop back, and ZOS got in a similar position. Team CLS Sneaks, who were in 7th last week, have been working their way back up the field, so it's going to be a good result for them. But Cryogen and Alvela Race really doing well and moving up the field, hence why you see him pushing so hard to keep Dirty Psychos away. It might be one of the key factors with Team CLS. So, you know, every team wants to come first, every team wants to get as high up as possible, but at some point kind of you see who your main opposition are, you have targets, and for CLS coming 7th last week, it might be a key thing for them just to solidify this position of 3rd or 4th in the race. So they may not want to do necessarily too much here, burn themselves out and risk losing their 4th rider, because we do have the chase group 24 seconds back from them with Dirty Dutch, who are the 3rd or 4th place team. Yep, Dirty Dutch were the 4th place team in the league, chasing them down. So again, CLS, they want to do some work, but make sure they have the legs to stay away if they, and essentially beat out this Dirty Dutch team with a ZR Scott as well. Be that 4th ZR Scott member. They've got a couple in here, but they've got 3 in that front group. So again, it's important they stay away, but have the legs just in case anything happens. And it does close down this front group now 35 seconds up the road. I'd be very surprised to see one of Aldridge from Cryogen dropping back, but I believe they still have 4 in the front group. They did have a couple of extra riders before. Yep, so they've still got 4 riders in the front group, so possibly Aldridge was used to ensure they stayed away. And if it was, that was a great success for Cryogen and well played tactically for them. It's going to be in their benefit to keep away. Yes, they may risk losing to Level Velo, but those Level Velo riders are still going to be having to work hard in this front group. And so making sure that they're guaranteed 1st or 2nd is more than worth sacrificing a rider for. As we saw, that chase group of Dirt and CLS were getting very close earlier. So it looks like this group has thinned out a bit, lost a couple of riders. See another one, ZR Scott riders falling back with Level Velo as well. So I think it's a bit of a strange tactic from ZR Scott at the moment. I'm not quite sure what they are really doing as a team in terms of communication and tactics. Ideally, they've got 3 right up in the front group and then 2 in the third group. So best case scenario, they're going to have, their 4th place rider and maybe could get up into that second group. I don't think anyone's going to make it all the way across. But currently, by not sending 3 riders back to help them, there's no chance this group is going to close down. This, maybe say 8 riders here, 7 riders now with 3 Team NL riders. They're trying to close down this much bigger group up the road with the Dirty Psychos and Team CLS, who are all determined to try and keep away at least, if not push on. And so, if you're ZR Scott up the road here, you've got 3 riders in this front group, with the 4th rider of the line counting. They really should be bringing them back and helping, because, at worst, they still finish in the same position with these 2 riders, Grieve and Dave D. So they still finish in, say, 5th place if they drop them back. But, if they drop them back, there's a chance they may not. And, if these 2 Dirty Dutch... Is there 2 Dirty Dutch riders? Down the road, yep, Norlander and Termat, if they manage to jump back on, and I've got Honor Affinian as well. So if those 3 even manage to jump back onto that group, the ZR Scott group up the road, then they could possibly lose some places in the overall standings. They should be sending those 3 riders back to help out. And that's why it really makes a difference having a dedicated DS or someone on the team who's really watching this, keeping an eye on things, and having planned out in advance. So just coming through the start-finish banner again. So we've got 10 kilometers to go to the finish. It starts just to heat up a little bit now towards the finish. With this little rise up, we've got then a long kind of bumpy tops to the course for the drop down Harlem Hill and a few more long drags, then up onto the KOM. This front group seems fairly comfortable now at 32 seconds up the road. They're still working hard on the front, taking rotations, which is good to see. But this gap at 30 seconds, it's unlikely to kind of come back or have a 4th rider close it. Even at 20 seconds, there's a chance a couple of riders may get across. Possibly more so in this race, with a slightly slower speeds and times at the KOM. But to have the 4th rider make it from a group behind isn't necessarily likely to happen. Say ZR Scott had a rider in the group behind, maybe that solo person could get up, get some points. But, this gap's more than comfortable. And if I'm in that front group, I'm just going to be sitting in now, getting as much rest as possible between now and the KOM. So onto this long straight now, and might just be able to see the second group on the course, depending on how nice Swift graphics want to play today. See if any of their Tron bikes light up, but it's a long gap now. At least when you can see them up the road, you have a bit more drive to try and catch them, but they're very much out of sight, at least in the Zwift world. So it's definitely going to kind of be less motivation for this chase group now. You see 35 seconds and I don't know many people who think 35 seconds are going to be able to chase across, get across easily. And it's a big thing when you have breakaways. When you see 2-3 seconds up the road, people will just jump across that in one go. They'll feel confident enough to do so. But as soon as it gets up to 8-10 seconds, people realise that's going to be a hard effort to get across. You know, if you hit a climb, 8-10 seconds can be nothing. You know, 3 seconds on a flat might be about the same as 8 seconds on a steep climb to bridge that gap, depending on what they're doing. But, you know, the difference is phenomenal. You see double figures on a breakaway. No one wants to be the person to jump across and put that effort in. And so when you see the likes of 30 seconds rather than 10 or so, people don't necessarily even want to work just to try and chase them down. They'd rather fight or with the team that's around them. And if you're psychos here, you're thinking, you know, you've got 5 riders, the CLS team around you, 30 seconds, the team up the road, you might as well just conserve a bit, save it, and make sure you solidify that bronze position on the podium today. Yes, they're going to lose points. They're going to probably end up off or joint first or second in the league going into next week, but it's far better than being 4th and definitely being out of first position. So that size at this point probably going to start setting on the finish. And the front group are going to be the same. They're going to be looking around. What's going to be a bit more intriguing is see one of the Team and L riders up there. And then you've got the 3 ZR Scott riders. So it could get a bit more exciting. You might see different things. Not quite sure what tactics that team of 3 for ZR Scott's really going to go with. You know, there's a chance they might not fully have read the brief. You never quite know with these things. And so they might go all in as a team, try something different, so you've got to be ready for it. And so these cryogen riders and level velo riders are going to want to be talking to them around the team themselves, working out what they want to do and how they want to deal with it as they come into Harlem Hill for the final time. And we look at the numbers, seeing where their advantage lies, where the other team's kind of weaknesses are. Do they struggle aerobically? Do they struggle anaerobically? Are they heavier riders so they carry more momentum into the base of climbs? Are they lighter riders so they can accelerate quicker? And you want to target something and see how you can possibly make that win. It might not work, but you've got to have some kind of plan going together into the last part of this course. See, it's fairly settled pace up there. Definitely more gentle than this kind of repeated 7-watt punches we saw earlier. 7-watt, no, not sure that'd be a punch, more of a gentle stroke. But 7-watt per kilo, perhaps. We saw people just pushing on front. This is a very settled pace. It seems like both these teams are willing just to, you know, leave it at this and fight out at the finish up the KOM itself. And that definitely is going to play into the hands of this chase group. Yeah, they look quite close on the mini-map, but that is quite a distance given how steep this section is. Again, it's that kind of being able to visually see them on the road does give them a bit more motivation to chase down. You never know at this point. Speeds are going to get drastically slower and slower into the base of the KOM as people really conserve. And you might see some of these teams like to possibly sacrifice a ride just to see if they can get across. If they know they've got one rider who doesn't quite have the punch to do as well up the KOM, it's a perfect time to really sacrifice and use them to drag them as close as possible to those teams up the road, because you never know what might happen. Both these teams only have 4 riders, level velo and cryogen, so any kind of huge blow up, any mechanical issue, any trainer or connection issue, and you've got to be ready to pounce and able to do so. See, little group of 3 off the front there from Dirt, just possibly working to push the pace. They're not doing crazy numbers, but again, it's enough just to slowly close that gap down down to 28 seconds. It's still a big gap. It's not necessarily going to be catchable at this stage. But if they keep eating away on this long kind of section between here and the base of the KOM and get it down to below 20 seconds, you never know what might happen. You see they managed to drop some of the CLS riders there, so it's definitely going to be in their favour to push on now. If Dirt want, they can end this race here for 3rd place, and that'll make a huge, huge advantage for them going into the KOM where they know they've got nothing to lose. But again, CLS, it's all or nothing for them now, getting back on. And they're going to be working very hard. See Barm just leading his other teammates. It's a really impressive push from him there. 5.7, just getting across, just resting up. He gets back into the draft as we saw, and they're just eased off to recover. It's good work from CLS as a team to get back on. So we like to see they were looking around. You could see that they were checking the gaps. They had a nice kind of 2-3 meter gap between each of their riders, and just eased up the power gradually, rather than just jumping hard and dropping for their teammates behind. So you see, and as we expected, this front group's really slowed down here. We're going into a bit of a downhill. We have one more kick and then get a real nice long downhill before the sprint banner and then into the KOM itself. And so you see the pace just really chilled out with 4% incline, and you can see one rider above 4 watts per kilo. Says enough. Everyone's just conserving energy here. They don't want to do too much. Again, the chase behind seems to have slowed a little bit, and that gap's eked back out above 30 seconds. What's quite interesting here, you see one of the cryogen riders is right on the front. Now I've seen this tactic a few times now. It works far better than it ever should. If you get on the front of a group, so many riders just don't want to go past. They don't want to be in first because of that saving in the draft, which makes a lot of sense. But if you've got a group up the road of your own team and you want this pack to go a bit slower, just getting to the front and doing reasonable numbers but slower than the group ahead can be enough to slow down that pace. You see Aldridge here, he pushes hard and he gets to the front and he's doing 2.8, 3 watts per kilo. It might be a bit on the low side, but there 3.5, 3.8 again on the incline. He's doing reasonable numbers, so people don't necessarily want to push past him, but up the road they're going to be doing higher and they're gaining time. And it's a really, really clever tactic that I hope is purposeful, but it works fantastically. It works really well on long climbs as well, like the Volcom. When you're on the volcano, if you know there's only a certain pace you can go at, sometimes it's in your benefit to go to the front and just set that pace. If you know anything above 5 watts per kilo is going to blow you up, getting to the front and just doing 5 watts per kilo can regularly mean that that's all the group will do. If there's no kind of sprint at the line, if it's just in the middle of a long points race or a scratch race with nothing necessarily to fight for, just setting that pace at the front, keeping a consistent pace. And if someone comes ahead of you, just giving a little dig, getting back ahead of them, and going back down to the numbers you can hold, sometimes means that no one else will do it. No one wants to do that extra work. They're willing just to sit in as long as the pace isn't stupidly slow. Again, big credits to Aldridge here from Cryogen. And he seems to be doing this repeatedly. I'd be surprised if there isn't a tactic just to get to the front, then slow up. There is a bit more sticky draft, so it used to be an even bigger tactic you'd see in races, where with sticky draft, if you get to the front then slow down, riders would get caught in the draft behind you, and it would push you out, you'd waste energy, and the group speed would definitely slow, so you'd see people sprinting to the front, then just easing up, getting riders stuck behind them, so their chase wouldn't be as effective. And we've seen a few more instances of that with the new Pack Dynamics 4. They had removed most of it in the last one, not quite sure what the actual science or code behind it was, but they had reduced the effect of sticky draft, and it seems to have come back just a little bit more. Nothing crazy, you don't see it getting constantly caught, but you notice if you're doing team time trials on Thursday regularly, that sticky draft has returned a bit, and it does make an impact. It generally is more of a kind of thing. The reason people push hard through the front, so sticky draft generally seems to be based, they've said that it's based more off some function of watts and watts per kilo, which I don't want to kind of make a strong stab at, but is whatever they use to control speed, whatever kind of form they're using. which will be some kind of function with the watts being outputted or the watts per kilo combined, as we see that watts per kilo still has an impact on the flat. See the first group just coming into the base of the KOM now. But it'll be based off that, but previously, you know, because watt per kilo is the dominant factor on most races, even the flatter races, you can just say if the rider ahead of you is doing higher watt per kilo, you're unlikely to come through them. And if they're dropping back but put a little dig of say 4 watts per kilo and you're only doing 3.8, even if you have the momentum, sometimes Zwift will essentially break you. It's not a purposeful braking like the auto braking, but it'll be enough just to slow you up and stick you in behind them, so you attach to their wheel rather than coming through them, and you lose all that momentum you've gained. So it's a really good way to stop people by getting to that front and just pushing a little bit more than them, then slowing, then pushing more than them, then slowing. And catch people out. See Cryogen pushing the pace again in the front. We've got a level velo rider there as well, but the Cryogen have the most riders up towards the front there, with everyone just sticking in again. The pace isn't high enough to really drop anyone. You see that 30-second gap down to the chase group behind the two of the Cryogen riders leading it up there, along with Dirty Psychos. Again, it's going to be a very clear kind of cut-off there. They're not going to bridge across those 30 seconds up here now. As we come to the second kick, and there we see Level Velo starting to push. We see a couple of them going. So a third rider kicking as well, but they don't seem to have really broken away yet. You can see the numbers. It looks like 3-4 meter gap. It's up to 6-7 now. So this Level Velo rider might be able to just ease away gradually, but again, it's just slowed up. Cryogen have reacted with Wunderback, but the key thing's going to be that fourth rider, and looking back, it's neck and neck. We've got Hilton for Level Velo and McNamee for Cryogen. We've had Bods there just dropping back, so just swapping around a little bit. This way, starting as the pace at the front is being pushed on. They're working hard, it's starting to stretch out. We're coming into a draftable section before the real tough, long drag up. And it's just a big fight between those fourth riders. And it's amazing. Think of like when you're trying to kind of calculate the permutations while you're absolutely blowing, so your 183 heart rate, and trying to think tactically is really, really difficult. So again, the real key is you just want to stick with your fourth rider. You want to help them out as much as possible. That's all that really matters up here. If another team starts to lose their fourth rider off the back, then maybe you can leave your fourth and push hard to try and create some separation, make it harder for them. But ultimately, you just want to stick around your fourth rider as much as possible and help them get over the line, beating the other teams. See Cryogen is there with 3 up on the road, pushing the pace. The only alternative perhaps is if you know your fourth rider on the road, or you have a rider with a significant sprint that's stronger than the rest of them, send your 3 riders up who don't have it, get them to do the work early, lead out, and then have your sprinter who may be a bit stronger just sitting up, going with their fourth rider, knowing that they can out-sprint them when needed at the end. So coming to the last section here, Cryogen have got 1 of their riders up the road, then the rest, all the others, 4 Level Velo riders, and the 3 Cryogen are all kind of grouping together. Just see Harden just struggling a little bit, but he's doing okay. Pushing 6 watts per kilo to respond and getting over together. So it's going to come down to a sprint finish. I can't imagine it's going to separate too much more. See McNamee, Cryogen just falling off a little bit, and this is the moment. This is going to be the decider here. And you see he's falling off, and instant kicks from Level Velo. So Hilton kicking 8 watts per kilo and all the rest of them up into the 4s. And that's the deciding factor right there. McNamee's going to be dropped for Cryogen, and that's going to be Level Velo taking first. Short of an absolute disaster. See, Cryogen have got their riders up the road. They've just sent them flying, but it hasn't worked out. They've not helped. And, at this point, if they'd had those 3 riders bridging the gap, possibly between Hilton here and McNamee, maybe McNamee would have got back on their wheel. And, you've got 3% here. That draft is going to be significant. Level Velo have executed this perfectly. They're all together as a group. Maybe some of them could push up and compete for the podium individually, but that's not what it's about. It's a team competition, and they've executed it perfectly, which is why they're taking the win today. Big credit to them. So you see here, McNamee's just falling back. Now Cryogen do have riders further back in that chase group, so while he is blowing up, it should be a fairly safe second position there for Cryogen. So just go back to the front as they come through the line. Looks like Wunderback's going to take the individual win for Cryogen. But what really matters is going to be the team crossing the line, which is going to be Level Velo level racing emeralds. So well done to level racing emeralds there. And short of an absolute disaster, the last one is going to be Cryogen Cannondale coming through to second. Then we're jumping back to where Dirt Psychos seem to have dropped CLS up the climb. But yeah, all it takes is dropping one of their members, and CLS possibly have just stuck back to help their fourth member, which is the key, because ZR-Scott are chasing down 17 seconds, which at this stage probably isn't going to be catchable, but you've got to watch out for it. So big credit to CLS there, all getting together and crossing the line together. You see Psychos coming through, which will be for third place even, as a team. So just sending it, we've got one of the Cryogen riders up the road, but that's not going to be enough. Cryogen are going to come through for second. See Ervik leading the way for Dirty Psycho's done a lot of work today, regularly at the front. Big credits to him. And there we go. So I believe Grieve here for ZR-Scott is going to be their fourth rider. It might be, I think it will be Grieve rather than Dave D there. So again, CLS are just holding him off. And they're going to come through for fourth place, but that's why it's important they're keeping together here. See, on Dave D, they're really pushing hard. Seeing what I can do with Grieve as well. And this stage, you know, riders won't necessarily be able to think properly, won't know who they're racing. See the Dirty Dutch rider just being overtaken. Yeah, I don't think they're fighting for the fourth place, where ZR-Scott is that. It's their fourth rider over the line. So they're going to be coming through for fifth place. I think that's the first Velas rider we're seeing coming through, Yarvinen. We've got plenty of Dirty Dutch as well, so it'll be Dirty Dutch with Norlander perhaps as their fourth rider. And then we've got a host of solo riders up the road, and then we've got this nice little group of TBR. A couple more. At this point, it's a bit of a lonely climb. It's tough because, you know, you're still fighting for points, still fighting for places, and you know, when you get back here, you're not quite sure which teams are where. You're not sure who's their fourth rider, so you've got to fight for every place. See Collinson just overtaking Termat for Dirty Dutch. I think at this point you might know, with most of his teammates behind him, that it's not necessarily going to count for points, but every little place does help usually, and you know, you might as well give it everything. See Termat just starting to slow a bit, unable to hold on. It's a tough thing, especially when someone comes through just before a big kick. They've just done the hard, steep section. They're just on the last bit of that. You can see the horrific downhill they've just come up. And to have someone just ride through you like that is really demoralising. See Collinson carrying on pushing through. So just watching the last few riders coming through. We've got TBR here, fighting hard for places. I'm not quite sure who their main opposition is going to be. It's between them and Velos. But I think, I'm not sure if it's a joint team. They seem to be separate teams on the standings. A couple of them have those joint names, so we'll see what's happening there later on. It's good to see him working very hard into the finish. Collinson here pushing hard. 6.5, 7 watts per kilo. Up the final climb at this stage of the race is really admirable. So just further back, we've just got a couple of people here fighting for places, and still Pride. Main thing we see Tommy there, who's dropped quite early on for the Dirty Psychos. Normally quite a strong ride, not sure what's possibly up. Chasing down Pedersen of TBR. 3 second gaps coming to finish. See a little bit of a chase here. 2 other TBR rides and ZR Scott. It's important they ascended early on this climb. It's one of those carrying speed in. You're not carrying a ton, but you're doing maybe 30 kilometers an hour into the base of it. And as you see, they're up to 15, 14 going down. You'll want to do the work early and break the opposition mentally. You know, it's possible to go late and maybe chase back down a gap, especially if people blow up. But, you know, when you see them 5, 6, 7 meters up the road, see they were together a few seconds ago, 5 second gap back to Niebenbara. You know, it's just mentally devastating to see that. It's so hard to get yourself back up to try and chase that back down. So you have a couple more of the TBR riders fighting it out with Warren and Pedersen. Again, you tend to see those who go early here. See Tommy chasing them down. But those who go early here tend to have the most success into this finish. So you're Finnan trying to chase down Tommy there. And it's going to be tight. It's a 4 second gap, but that big speed advantage is going to pay dividends, especially it's quite a bit longer to the line still. So you're Finnan coming through with some real pace, and going to be tough for Tommy here as he just flies through. And you can see the huge pace difference from doing those numbers up there. Really goes to show, you know, that 8 watts per kilo versus 5, 4. It's a big old difference in speed, and it really counts into the finish of races. Just got a couple more psychos a bit further back on the course. So rather than watching one of them even pausing for the camera, but rather than watching them all the way to the finish, and then lovely ZRL winner's helmet, we're going to jump onto the results now for you. So just a quick recap of the ZwiftPower standings going into this for the Goal 2 category, which is what we're following today. Apologies for any earlier confusion. So Dirty Psychos were in the lead with Cryogen Cannondale and Level Velo Racing Emeralds in 3rd place. Dirty Dutch 4th, ZS Scott Black in 5th, and the rest of the teams further down. SCW didn't see too many of them today. CLS Sneaks, TBR, and then Velos Vienna. So going on to the results so far, we've got Kenny Vunderback saw for Cryogen in 1st, Dornbos of NL, Burdenham from Cryogen, and Grant Fineal in 4th. But then again, it was maybe in 4th, but that was their 3rd rider over the line. Whereas we look at Level Velo and their 4th rider, Nick O'Connell, in 9th place, and that's what counts. It's that 4th rider over the line. So Nick O'Connell, 9th place, taking 1st for Level Velo in the standings. Then we have Cryogen with Andrew McNamee down 11th, cutting them in 2nd place. Interesting again, we had this part with the 3 ZR Scott riders. I mentioned it a few times, but it ended up not working out in their favour at all. They should have ideally dropped them back tactically. As you saw, Dirty Psychos will come through for 3rd place there. Then CLS in 4th place with all 4 riders finishing together, and then only down in 5th place we have ZR Scott, despite 3 of the riders putting in a fantastic performance, being in that lead group pretty much all the way to the finish. They just, as a team, they didn't play it out right and didn't help the other riders get to the finish quickly. They had maybe 9 seconds we see there between the 4th rider for Team CLS and the 4th rider, Grieve, for ZR Scott. If they had the help of 3 other riders from their team, they should have been able to close that down. So then we find Team NL probably coming through in 6th place, is it then? Yep, 6th place there for Team NL, their 4th rider, Ruben Jonker, and Richard Dornbest being right at the front. So there you go, there's the results for this Goal 2 category. Now next week, we're going to be on the Muckle Yin. For those of you who haven't seen enough Scotland, it's a great course, got a huge variety of segments. I mean, it's going to be back to a normal points race, 23.7 kilometers, doing the full loop of it, which means we're going to be covering the 6 different segment opportunities, but we're going to be having 3 segments in play. So that'll be the Breakaway Bray Reverse, then the Sker Summit North, which will be FGS. So the Breakaway Bray Reverse will be a first across the line, which is a punchy uphill. It's a sprint of sorts. It's a bit of you have a very steep climb. You've just come over the castle kicker, and they have a steep climb up before it gradually just gets a bit flatter towards the actual line itself. So it's an interesting one tactically. Possibly long attacks are the way to go, especially if you can have a bit of a lead out as a team. First across the line. Then moving, we'll have the Sker Summit North, which is the longer of the two sides, on dirt, which is going to be FTS. So possibly a bike swap for any dropped riders there. Could be a viable tactic. A bike swap and a big old 5-minute effort to take FTS there. And then swap back at the top. And then the final segment is going to be the breakaway bray in the forward direction. So again, most of you will have seen that before. Did a few of it previously in other series. And it's just going to be first across the line. It's the long climb. And tend to see hard 1-minute efforts up there. Then we'll go over the Sker Summit South. Then the Clyde kicker. None of which will be counting for points. But again, big features on the course finishing on the champion sprint. So thanks very much for joining me this week. We're going to be following 3 races again next week with de-essing in the Atlantic area. We're going to be following the Sprocket Kings again in the Platinum Plus. Then we're going to be going back to Platinum Plus for the earlier EMEA Central Division before we'll go back to Gold 1, hopefully this time, in this later EMEA West Division. Thanks very much for joining for the commentary. Hopefully you found it slightly interesting. If you've got any comments, please leave them, or any tips.